Hey friends, I'm Ernie Veritimus from the Trader of Futures channel. Now some of you may know me and some of you probably don't, so let me start this way. I share many of the same views as Greg Mannarino, and I hope to bring a perspective that is complementary to his daily vlogs that he's done so long on YouTube and now moving over to another platform. So I have three things to share with you today. First, I want to thank Greg for everything that he's done over the years to expose the hypocrisy and the malfeasance of the Federal Reserve and the central banks, and the guidance he's shown all of us in the wake of incredible market distortions that they've created. Now, Greg has been an inspiration, not only because of his market insight, but because of his selfless dedication to all of us, to you and to me, and to his friends. And I can personally attest to that, and I can't thank him enough. Now, Greg espouses a very simple plan. He says, stay informed, be a skeptic, and do your own due diligence, and become your own central bank. So that's first thing. Second thing, this is a little lengthier. Since the great market crash, over the past 8 years, we've experienced what has been the most sluggish recovery since World War II. And I suspect that much of that data that indicates that there is some kind of recovery has been so manipulated that on balance, I'm completely skeptical that we ever recovered at all. In my view, the Fed and the government have been doing nothing more than crafting a kind of a new normal for us. One that's far less than we deserve and far more bleak than they're letting on and probably what we could imagine. I mean, every week we go through various economic reports, and then there's the periodic Federal Reserve policy statements. And yet we see a disconnect, kind of a divergence from the reality that the Fed is trying to paint and the reality that we can plainly see and what we experience. I mean, Janet Yellen, like all her predecessors, is obviously in bed with the central banks in an attempt to transfer wealth and power to, I guess, what would amount to their friends or, you know, the people that run in their circles, while simultaneously trying to brainwash the masses into thinking that they have our best interest in mind and at the forefront of whatever efforts that they are doing. Now, we know it's not true. I mean, the American people are not stupid, and we're not patsies, but unfortunately there's many of us that have this sort of unbridled faith in what amounts to their giant Ponzi scheme that they call the monetary system, which is largely based on generating government debt to stimulate the economy. Now, this is a Keynesian principle that has the insane notion that debt has value. I mean, how long can it last before it all collapses? I mean, I think that's the general question that we're all asking. I mean, eventually, all debt systems, all fiat systems collapse. Now, I say insane because we try over and over to increase the debt through government spending with the idea that this will eventually elevate our economy, that it will kickstart it like a paddle shock, that it will at some point become self-sustaining. Yet it never happens, and we continue to grow our debt, putting further burden on us and future generations. I guess when you own the casino, you make all the rules, and the Fed sees no limit to the amount of debt that we can create, so long as we can push other economic factors just as high, just high enough to maintain some kind of equilibrium. But I think it's more like skating on really thin ice. It just feels like we could crack at any moment. And I think that that's the general feeling across the market. But it's more insidious when you see them make stuff up that doesn't fit their model, like GDP numbers, which have been altered at least twice over the past several decades to report better, or appear to report better, than the way it used to be calculated in the past. And it's the same deal with the employment report. By conveniently omitting unenrolled numbers in their top-line data, it makes employment look better than it actually is. Now, And all of this manipulation is at the hands of the central bankers. Every transaction, every loan, every aspect of our lives, including our health care and now some made-up carbon tax, is designed to keep us dependent upon them. That's kind of a little bit of a rant, I guess. So now I'm going to move into this third thing I wanted to talk about. And that's cryptocurrencies and blockchains. Now, I believe that most of you are probably familiar with Bitcoin, but you may not know exactly what it is, and well, other than the fact that it's some new fad and speculators and scammers are making fortunes off of it due to the hype. But it's really way more than that. Cryptocurrencies and the blockchain represent something very important. They represent a way that two people can do a financial transaction of any size without the need for a middleman. That's a key point. And that middleman is the bank. This scares the hell out of the central bankers because that's exactly how they exert control over us, by controlling the transaction. And in the process, controlling our identities and our personas. Now, I hesitate to call cryptocurrencies, of which the biggest is Bitcoin, a currency because of how unstable Bitcoin is. It's more like a speculative asset. And some people are actually calling it the new gold, or even a safe haven currency. Now, I wouldn't go that far. I find these comparisons a little bit obtuse and generally unrealistic, at least from our perspective, an American's perspective. But if you were to take that same idea of a safe haven currency, say from the perspective of a Venezuelan who's suffering under civil war and oppression of a communist dictator, they're afraid for their lives and their livelihood and everything that they strived and worked for all their lives. And they're facing hyperinflation and the devaluing of all their assets, everything that they've ever worked for. And right now, the only alternative they have in order to sort of retain or store that value is with Bitcoin. At least there, even if Bitcoin were to lose half of its value, they'd still have something, which is better than their future prospects of hyperinflating their currency into nothing. So I guess it's all in perspective. To us, Bitcoin is speculative and highly volatile digital asset that, we certainly couldn't consider. It's just not stable enough to be a currency or replace, things that we need for current transactions. But from a Venezuelan's perspective, it is a safe haven currency. It is their hope. But you might say that Bitcoin has no intrinsic value, and that's not entirely true. At least not in the same way that, say, gold or silver has intrinsic value. But it is backed by real money and other assets. And you can exchange it into US dollars or just about any other currency. There are all kinds of cryptocurrencies coming onto the market. I mean, in fact, there's hundreds of them. And each with its own plan to store value of some sort. They all have kind of a purpose. Some are more general currencies for exchanging goods and services. Others are designed for very specific purposes. So the important part is that what they do is they allow us to exchange value directly between parties. So just how big is this whole cryptocurrency universe? And this is kind of interesting. It's currently about $150 billion, but it's growing at an incredible clip. And Bitcoin has the biggest market cap at around $70 billion. It's a generalized cryptocurrency, but there are many others with a very specific business purpose in mind. Now, one I know that you're familiar with, and that's Steem, which is the crypto blockchain behind the social network Steemit. That's where Greg posts a lot of his content now. Now, Steem currently has the hold on, it has the 22nd largest market cap in the world. Now, Steem value comes from the Steem tokens for the creation of content, including articles and video and art, and then also the social interaction that happens around that content. Steam currently has a market cap of over $328 million. That's not anything to sneeze at. Now, if you wanted to see the top 100 cryptocurrencies, including Steam, and also what their purpose is, you can go to coinmarketcap.com, and you can check out Steam and the other 100, and click on the link for each one of the cryptos, and then go to the website for that particular project. There are, literally dozens or hundreds of project teams and developers out there that are creating cryptos for different purposes, and it's actually quite fascinating. Now, I'm telling you all of this because cryptocurrencies, they're here to stay. They're not a passing fad. Now, right now, they have a $150 billion market cap, which might seem big, but in the grand context, in terms, trying to compare that to trillion-dollar markets, it really isn't that big. I mean, Apple has more cash on hand than the total market cap of cryptocurrencies. But by the end of this year, it's projected that cryptocurrencies will be up around $500 billion. And sometime in 2018, it should reach $1 trillion in market cap. Now we're talking real money. Now you should at least educate yourself, because this all ties into our possible freedom from central bankers. And they are right now trying to figure out how to prevent that from happening, or by adopting these or co-opting these technologies and, I don't know, using it for their own nefarious means. But the market is growing way too fast for them to keep up. The central banks simply aren't nimble enough to compete with all these other development projects out there, and also the will of the people. We're ahead of the game. That's what it comes down to. The thing about blockchain technology is that it's a disruptive technology, meaning that it's finding its way into a whole slew of different groundbreaking use cases. Now, on a government side, it actually has some really cool uses that I think would improve commerce and our general lives. For instance, like patents or trademark or copyrights. Now, there's even this talk of it overhauling a voting system that would make it virtually impossible to have a fraudulent voting process. Now that's big. Now, there are amazing opportunities in many of the upcoming ICOs. That stands for initial coin offering. It's kind of like IPOs, initial public offering with stocks. Only the big difference here, just like where cryptos in our transactions, the bank isn't involved. In an ICO, Wall Street's not involved. It's literally between the company and the investors. So there's another potential use for blockchain technology, in my view, and that's eliminating Wall Street manipulators. So that's really the big point that I wanted to make here. That, like Greg says, you got to do your due diligence, you have to do your homework, you have to be skeptical, and you have to become your own central bank. And cryptocurrencies actually have a future. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to adopt these right away. I think that we have to wait until they have greater acceptance before they can be used for general use. But they do offer us a way to separate ourselves from this insidious evil, these central bankers that are trying to control our lives. So I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I think it complements some of the words that, some of the thoughts that Greg has had on cryptocurrencies, and maybe gives you a little bit more insight as to what Steemit is all about. And I hope that in the future, Greg will allow me to talk about other issues that I think that are important, that you could use to your benefit. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.